Shanti. A greeting of peace to my sisters and my brothers. Let's see how spirituality can actually help us cope with day-to-day problems and the things that we have to face in the world today. One of the things that comes up regularly in our lives is the whole question of worrying. Perhaps you're one of the lucky few individuals who's not afflicted with this, but most of the people you probably know are warriors. Maybe you fit in within that category yourself also. And maybe you'll say that of course worry is part of life, it's natural. In fact, when I'm worrying, I'm losing a lot of my energy. The work that I have to do may perhaps take me just half an hour, but the amount of time I spend worrying about that work might be 12 hours, 24 hours, maybe days and weeks even. And yet, if I were to actually begin to do the work, it would be accomplished in a very short space of time. And so I've tired myself out worrying needlessly. If I just focused my mind and looked at what needed to happen and got on with the task, I would have saved myself a lot of energy. At the end of any one day, sometimes we find ourselves exhausted, and it's not because of the amount of work that we've actually done, but rather it's because of the amount of energy we've dissipated just simply through worrying. How often have you worried and discovered that, in fact, you didn't need to worry at all? A lot of our worries stem from our own imagination. A very simple situation. A child is late home from school and the parent is worrying, and the mind has got into this negative pattern that's creating very bad feelings and emotions, and all sorts of scenarios are passing through the mind. Maybe this has happened, maybe that has happened, all sorts of horrible things. And yet, the child comes home half an hour later, an hour later maybe, and this very simple explanation, or not even any explanation, just simply that the child decided to have a chat with friends and walked home slowly instead of coming home quickly. How much energy did I lose just simply worrying, when I needn't have spent that time worrying? I could have used my mind in a creative and constructive way instead. Worry simply enhanced all the fears that were inside me, amplified them, and perhaps even made me angry, so that instead of welcoming the child with love when the child does finally come home, I get angry and upset. And of course it's not the right mood to be welcoming the child with, and so the child's not going to experience a happy home, but rather there's going to be a bad feeling left about the whole incident. I needn't have worried. I could have kept myself very calm and cool and welcomed the child with a big smile and a happy hug instead of my anxiety and fears. The things that we worry about, we're not actually able to resolve through our worries. If I were to keep my mind calm and peaceful, I would be able to look at a situation, understand it, analyze it, step back a little bit away from it, so that I could see clearly what needed to happen, what it is I needed to do, and with that correct power of discernment, I would be able to come to a decision and resolve the situation. Instead, what happens is, I'm faced with something and I worry. And the worry grows bigger and bigger, and the problem seems huge and as big as a mountain, and I become afraid and I'm not able to know what to do about it. I create confusion for myself through my own worry. Is worry natural? At the present moment it seems so. Is it possible to have a life free from worry? I believe so. I believe it's possible to become the master of one's own mind. If I can understand what's going on within my own mind, then I'll be able to channel the energy of my mind in the direction of my choice, and I would become more effective in the things that I do in my life, but also I'd be able to be far happier, and I'd be able to share that happiness and give happiness to others also. As it is, without understanding what's going on in my own inner world, simply being upset or allowing worry to take over my mind, I'm ineffective in my life because my energy is being wasted. So often, at the end of the day, we're tired and exhausted, not because of the work we've been able to accomplish, but rather because of the energy that we've wasted simply worrying about something. Spirituality tells me that I am the master of my own thoughts, because I am the creator of my own thoughts. Thoughts aren't coming to me from outside, but rather I, within my own inner being, am the creator of thought. And through spirituality, I can understand how it is I can look at my mind and see in which direction to focus my thoughts. I can select out of all the variety of thoughts that are going on in my mind, which are the positive ones, which are the constructive ones, which are the useful ones, and discard the ones that are negative, the ones that are wasteful, the ones that serve absolutely no purpose. Of course, this doesn't happen overnight. It can happen very, very fast, but it takes my own motivation. It requires my own desire to actually come to that state. What I have to do is to start looking at what's going on in my own inner world. Silence, introspection, meditation, these are the methods that people have used through the centuries to be able to become the masters of their own mind. And in today's conditions, where there's so much disturbance and chaos all around me, it's imperative that I should be able to respond in a positive way rather than with anxiety and worry. In today's world, perhaps we're spending more on tranquilizers and drugs that have an impact on the mind than at any other time in history. Perhaps the person has everything that they want for in life, and yet open their bathroom cabinet or their bedroom drawer and you'll find tranquilizers and pills, sedatives. Maybe there's so much anxiety and worry that there isn't even the natural pattern of sleep anymore. This is the condition that we've allowed our minds to reach, simply because we haven't practiced the consciousness of being the master of our own minds. Imagine the situation if the horse is running wild and pulling the cart behind him, but of course the cart's having a very hard time because the horse isn't disciplined. It's going wild. The same thing is happening with our minds and our lives today. Instead of being able to channel the energy of the horse in a constructive and creative direction, the horse has run wild, the mind is running wild. It's possible to start looking at my mind. It's possible then to be selective about the quality of thoughts, and then to be able to decide which direction I want to use my mind in. In which direction do I want the horse to be running in? If I can do this, even for just a couple of minutes at first, and then increase this so that I'm moving on to 5 minutes, 10 minutes, the impact of that experience of meditation and silence for that period of however many minutes it is, then has an impact through the rest of the day. Because whatever I'm doing in that stretch of silence and meditation, I'm able then to practice further on. It leaves an impact, so that later on through the day also, I discipline my thoughts. I'm able to be the master of my own mind. Worry is that state in which I let go of the reins of the horse and so it goes wild. Spirituality means picking up the reins in my hands once again and channeling the energy in the right way. Worry also comes because I'm not taking charge of what's happening in my own life. I'm letting situations become my master instead of making a conscious decision about the direction that I would like my life to be going in. We have many choices, but so often we lack the wisdom with which to be able to make the right choice. And yet, of course, especially at the present time in history, information, knowledge is available to each and every one of us. There are no reasons, no excuses for me not to have the power of knowledge. And so let me expose myself to the study of spirituality so that I can understand what the choices are in front of me. And if I can look at those choices and with calmness, with coolness, in the awareness of my own eternal self, make the choice that's going to bring me the results that I would like to see, I don't need to worry. Worry is not only a waste of my own energy, but worry is also that situation where I waste the time and energy of others. How often have you been with a person who's a constant worrier, and in their company you're wasting your time also, because all they'll do is share with you their worries and anxieties and maybe even repeat them several times, and it's not effective, it's not going to help. They're simply churning the same thing and going through the rut that's going on in their mind again and again. But if, when you're in company with somebody who is a warrior, you can say to them, hey, look, stop for a moment. Let's just look at the situation with calmness, with coolness, and help them. Then you'll be able to actually pull them out of that anxious rut, and you'll be able to allow them to see life from a different perspective. A person who worries is constantly looking at the negative side of life. And yes, that's also my choice. There's the very simple example in which we talk about whether the glass is half empty or it's half full. A worrier will say, but it's half empty already. What's going to happen tomorrow? But the positive vision is, well, there's still half there. There's still a lot there that I can use. And so, what is my perspective on life? Is it a negative perspective or is it a positive perspective? With wisdom, with spiritual understanding, I'm able to make a conscious choice away from negativity and looking at spirituality, looking at the positive side of life. And rather than show me the sunny side, I don't need to spend my time in worry. I can look at good things and see how to make the best possible use of all the time and energy that's available for me at this moment. Worry means that I worry about myself, I worry about my future, instead of actually using my time and talents to do something which is constructive, that can open the door of opportunity. Worry means that whatever talents I have are going to waste because I'm not using them in the most effective way. Worrying about others, again, absolutely a total waste of time. What I can do is set a good example. If there's something I'm worried about in terms of other people in my life, if I know I'm doing the right thing, that's going to be the inspiration and example for them. I can't force them to do anything. I can't impose my will on others. Yes, in terms of responsibility for young children, yes, I have to do that. But in that case too, if I'm doing it with clarity and understanding and wisdom, instead of just simply worrying about them, then that's going to have an effective pattern for them to follow for their own life for the future also. Pattern passes on from generation to generation. A good pattern is handed down and passes on. A negative pattern also gets passed on. So if a parent worries, very often children grow up in the same frame of mind. They learn to be worriers also. But if a parent is able to be light and easy and constructive and positive, that's also the impact and influence on the next generation, and they start moving in the right way too. But even when children grow up and become young adults, worrying about them definitely isn't going to be helping them. What I have to do in that particular situation is make them my friends, sit with them, explain to them. I can't impose discipline on them. What I can do is explain the consequences of certain actions and the result of good actions and the happiness that they can have from that. But simply worrying about them isn't going to help. But rather, clarity and explanation is going to open the door of opportunity and fortune for them. So let me not worry about those whom I love, but rather let me engage in constructive actions so that I can be of positive help to them for their future also. The things that I'm worrying about are actually unnecessary completely. If I have clarity, I do the right thing at the right time, without any worry. Action is more important than just thinking about what may or may not happen, but to actually find out the facts and make my choices on the basis of those facts is going to be more effective. Spirituality teaches me how to make good use of every moment, how to make good use of the most precious energy that I have, and that is my time and my thoughts. Let me use that in the right way, and I don't need to worry about anything at all. Worry comes out of habit. Whatever habit it is I develop, that's the habit that then traps me. And so what I need to do is to learn to create positive habits. The mind works in a circle. Thoughts come, actions follow, but they create further thoughts. And so understanding the cycle of life, from thought to action, from action, the imprint that's created within myself is creating further thought. And so if I worry, that pattern of worry gets imprinted within my consciousness. And to come back to the awareness of positive thoughts and the power of positive thoughts means my life is filled with positivity, good actions, and the power then again to create good thoughts within myself. Life is too short to waste in worry. Let me use my time and energy constructively so that then it's a life filled with truth and beauty rather than imagination and fears that have no founding whatsoever. It's my choice what to do with my own life and my own inner world. Let's spend a few minutes experimenting with this awareness of good thoughts, positive ideas, so that my life can be filled with good actions. Sitting quietly, I look inside and looking into the space within, I can see my thoughts moving in many different directions. The energy of my mind is scattered, being pulled and distracted by many different things. I select the thought that I want to have. I select the thought of peace. hold the thought of peace, and keeping this thought, I can feel power growing within myself. I empower myself with peace. And as I keep this awareness of peace within my own being, I am strengthened, empowered, refreshed. And I can send out rays of peace so that I create an atmosphere of peace. Keeping this awareness of peace, I come back to the consciousness of my responsibilities here and now, but now I look out at the world and the things in my life strengthened, refreshed with this awareness of inner peace. Om Shanti. Om Shanti. A greeting of peace to my sisters and my brothers. Spirituality is very much a power that's needed in today's world, especially in today's world. Never before has there been such a time of trauma and chaos. And within this situation, one of the universal illnesses that affects each and every person, whether it's a person living in the north or the south or the east or the west, whatever age they may be, or whatever social conditions they may find themselves in, yet fear is a universal illness. And fear, when it comes to one, infects everybody else around that one also, because fear is contagious. Perhaps you feel that, well, just as there are so many different fluctuations and ups and downs in human life, of course fear is natural and it's something that we have to live with forever. And yet, fear is actually quite dangerous. A person influenced by fear leads to all sorts of decisions and actions that otherwise, when one is calm and cool and collected, one just wouldn't be doing. When I'm afraid, my mind is clouded, my intellect is confused, and I'm not able to think clearly. And so I take steps that later on I regret. When there are difficulties all around us, and surely this is a time of great difficulty, Our fear multiplies the difficulties and worsens the situation. If instead of being afraid, I could stay peaceful, calm, and stable, I would be in a better position to be able to do the things that can lead me out of danger, and also I could be an effective instrument to help and support others around me. And so it is important to be able to look at the subject of fear and see what are the deep roots, the causes that create fear, and how it is we're able to actually deal with them and resolve them. One of the things that causes fear is illness. When I'm ill, then of course the fear that comes is, well, what does the future hold? And the mind instantly runs off to the worst scenario possible, and what haunts my mind at that moment is the fear of my own death. Let's stop here and look at the subject of death. It isn't a subject that we like to talk about, and yet, of course, it is inevitable. Just as birth is absolutely natural, in the same way, death is surely also part of the human cycle, and just as birth is natural, so too the passing away, what we describe as death, also has to then be equally natural. We rejoice when there's a child that takes birth, and of course when someone dies, it seems to be a time of great grief and mourning, and yes, we have love and attachments and concern, but in fact, just as the day has to give way, and at some point of time the night has to come, equally in the same way, birth, life, and at a certain point, I don't know when, but surely there has to come a moment when I'm ready to leave. And so to be able to look at death in the face and actually understand what death is means that I'm able to go beyond fear of death, and also then beyond fear of illness. Every tradition has taught us about the eternity of the spirit, or the eternity of the soul. Of course, in today's conditions where life has become very materialistic and our attitudes and vision are colored completely by all the physical aspects around us, it applies in a very deep and powerful way to the identity that I hold of myself, the image that I have of who I am. And of course, generally speaking, our image or identity is connected completely with the physical form. And that's what causes fear of death, because the physical form has a moment of starting, and just as surely as something begins, something has to end, so too the physical form has a moment which is the end, death. But the spirit is eternal. The spirit doesn't have a beginning and therefore cannot have an ending. This word eternity is difficult for us to come to terms with, because we're used to working in the human world within parameters, within limits, and so we've no idea what eternity is actually like. And yet, the understanding of the spirit, and more importantly, the awareness of the spirit, the experience of my own eternal identity, and in spiritual terms, I understand that I am the living being, the soul, residing here, just behind the forehead, in the center of the brain. I am that being of light, the eternal being, occupying this costume, this physical body, to play my role on the world stage. It's not enough to hear these words, but I must start thinking about them. And as I begin to think about these ideas, the concept of the soul, the concept of eternity, I begin to get a glimpse of what eternity actually is. I'm able to step above, beyond limits, and come to that awareness of I, the eternal being of light. Death cannot come to me. This body ends, but the soul is eternal, immortal. In our scriptures it says that fire cannot touch the soul, water cannot harm the soul, the wind cannot touch it, the air cannot touch it. Nothing that a human being can do can touch this eternal spirit, the being of light. And so this is who I am. I am that eternal spark of consciousness. And in this awareness, I'm able to see death simply as a transition. Death doesn't mean a dark door that blocks everything and puts an end to everything. Rather, death can be seen as a door through which one passes and moves on to another state of experience, another state of awareness. Whatever my understanding may be of the life beyond, and there are different concepts about this, of course, but certainly all the traditions tell us that the soul is eternal, and so death is not an ending. Rather, it is the start of something else, a new beginning. My own experience of eternity will bring me to that awareness that I don't need to be afraid of death. Some of you may have heard of people who've gone through the near-death experience, and whichever tradition it is they come from, whether it's Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, whatever it may be, but there's a lot of research and documentation about this subject, and what these people have described is that at the point of death, and there's actually clinical death at that moment, and it may last for a few minutes, it may last for several minutes, sometimes it's been recorded as having lasted for anywhere up to 30 to 40 minutes even. But in that state, the soul experiences a separation, a separate existence from the body. The body has been described as death, but the soul is very much alive and is conscious and is aware. And in that state, it goes through a series of experiences. It seems to go through a dark tunnel. It comes out of that tunnel. It comes to an experience of infinite light, a light that seems to be a light that gives love and surrounds that soul with a very benign feeling of goodness. In fact, there's such a good feeling that certainly no soul wants to come back. But sometimes there's what's called unfinished business. And so the soul then comes back, and it then has to pick up the threads of its life and continue with whatever is the business, and it has to learn to settle that. But certainly one thing changes for all these people, and that is they're no longer afraid of death, because they know that there is life beyond. And yes, sometimes people have come back and described these things. Another experience that happens at that moment is, of course, the whole of one's life flashes in front of one's eyes. And so it's an indication that all the experiences we've been through, we carry within our own being. The soul is that being that records all experiences. In this awareness of the soul, definitely I'm able to go beyond the fear of death. And then, if I'm in a period of illness, then I know that, yes, the body is settling whatever are the accounts that have come to be cleared, but even in that state of physical illness, that process of inner detachment from the body gives the soul the strength to be able to tolerate the pain and cope with the discomfort of the illness. And during that period of illness, one knows that through the power of the mind, through the power